Hey everybody, and welcome back to a Silver Review. Today we're going to be doing a full review of Act 3 in Path of Exile, The Fall of Oraith. We're going to be looking at a couple different factors, similar to my other videos: area aesthetics, music, story, bosses, flow, difficulty, and then a wrap-up of the whole act. The first thing we're going to look at is the area aesthetics. One thing that I noticed is that we visited a lot more locations and we had more dynamic environments in Act 3. We did areas like the sewers, there were towns, there were ruins, there were gardens, there were towers, there were docks, and there was a palace. Usually I'm listing like 4 areas when I've been doing these before, and this one was just a lot more broad. We went to a lot more places, and it actually felt a lot bigger to me than the other acts. So I would say, as far as area aesthetics go, this one might be the winner. Even though I really did enjoy Act 1, this so far it has been superior. Act 2 definitely falls short in comparison to Act 3. The second point that we'll move into was the music. And the music for Act 3 I felt like was more creepy, or maybe the environments were just a little bit more creepy that we were going into, such as right before we went and fought Piety. You're dealing with a lot of gross-looking creatures, and the music definitely was more fitting to that mood. I did feel like overall I've noticed the music a little bit less in Act 3, which could be because I was getting used to it, I thought, or it was just so fitting. Maybe it didn't need to bring me out of the experience. So a little bit less impactful, but I thought it was very fitting. Now the story of Act 3. Now, I've been complaining a bit in all of my reviews about the story of Path of Exile and how it hasn't really been easy to follow for me. And Act 3, some people did mention, would be a slightly different story. And I feel like it is. You have a character involved in the story now who you've got a little bit of a rapport with in Piety, right? You meet her in Act 1. I didn't really know what she was doing, but at least I recognized that she was a character. Act 2, you are kind of chasing her a little bit, I felt like. And then in Act 3, I feel like Act 3 is a chase. You're trying to get to her for 80% of the actual story, and then eventually you fight her, and it's pretty epic. It felt like a big story moment, and then after that you go and kill her boss, or at least that's what I assumed was going on when you go and kill Dominus. So I did feel like the 80% of Act 3 was excellent as far as story goes, or a lot better anyway, maybe not excellent, but a lot better than the previous acts, and then the last percent kind of fell short, especially because leading into Act 4 comes right out of Act 3, and you find out that Dominus wasn't even really her boss. You're looking for something called the Beast. So I thought it was a lot better, but it still could have used some improvement. Coming out of the story, we're moving into bosses. And the bosses in Act 3 are a little bit more along the lines of what I'd been told I was going to be getting into, and kind of what I remember. So they all were a little bit trickier, and they all had mechanics involved in their fights, which I thought was good. General Graviticus, I think is his name, he's got energy shield, does quite a bit of damage, so if you're running away and kiting him a lot, his HP comes back, so you got to make sure that you're constantly engaging in him, but you can't stand in any of the fire pools. Piety, she teleports around all over the place and has a couple different elemental attacks, summons a bunch of additional adds, so that was good. And then Dominus, you got to do quite the little gauntlet of mini bosses before you can even start him, and then he does mainly lightning attacks, I think, and you just have to react to those. I had max lightning resist, so I didn't find him to be particularly difficult, but I still kind of played with the mechanics. I still dodged the hand of God, or whatever he kept doing, and the other like the other mechanics of the fight, and I felt like that was really interesting. I did feel like his cockroach phase was kind of boring. Maybe it was too easy for my character type, but I pretty much just right-clicked on him and used potions and killed the ads when they came, and that was it. But the first phase of Dominus I thought was really interesting. So these bosses were definitely better than all the other bosses so far, and I'm looking forward to doing a review of the Act 4 bosses, because I've fought a little bit into Act 4 already before I did this review because I was excited, and it was pretty interesting. It was pretty good. The flow of the act. I think I did it all in one sitting. All of Act 3 in one sitting. I think it took me about 2 hours because I was going slow. I could have done it way faster, but I felt like it had a really good flow. Everything was pretty natural. I could see how it could get confusing for people when you have to go to the docks, and I don't remember it ever telling you to go to the docks. But you can't go over the bridge or whatever, and if you take a look at the map, it seems relatively logical that you would go to the docks, but I don't ever remember that. So the flow was good. I never had a moment where I didn't know where I was supposed to go, and the story seemed intuitive and a lot better than the other acts. So I would say the flow for this act was better than Act 2. Maybe not better than Act 1. Act 1 flowed very well other than the pacing. But I think the pacing problem comes from not having very many skills and not having any movement speed, because movement speed makes a big difference when you're playing an ARPG. Difficulty. Okay, so I did not find the majority of the act difficult, but I did find some spots like scary for my character, scary for my life. I feel like resistances became very important in Act 3, and I only really had lightning resist. So anytime there was a lightning mob or lightning attacks, it wasn't really a concern. But in the docks, I almost died. In the ribbon area, I almost died. There were some corpse explosions. I think corpse explosion must do fire damage, because that was a really scary skill. And I thought that the difficulty was reasonable. I think I'm a little under-leveled now, which makes it a little bit more challenging and quite fun. So I'd say the difficulty was where I wanted it to be for Act 3, but I could even go a little higher and I would still be having a ton of fun. I want a little bit more dynamic skill use, and I feel like in Act 3 I actually started using less skills than I was in Act 2, mainly because I just found them to be easier. So I think that could use some work. Well, not necessarily use some work, but it could be something to improve upon. Overall, I would say this was the best act so far. People were right when they said that it would be getting better as the game went. It makes me worried about my scale, though, because I think I gave the last one 87 mangoes. And if this is better, that means we're headed into the 90 mangoes. And if it keeps on this trend, where people keep telling me the game gets better as it goes, I might have to adjust my previous rankings, because you can't give something more than 100%, and nothing's ever perfect. There's always something that they can improve on. But this act, if I'm comparing it to the previous ones, was definitely the best, and I think we're going to head into the A+ range so far. I might have to adjust my scale later, but we'll give it 90 mangoes, which is a damn good score. I hope you enjoyed the review, and if there's anything else you want to see, please let me know. If you disagree with any of the reviews that I'm giving the game, please let me know, and I'll try to think about that when I do my next one, because a lot of the people have been leaving me comments, and those have been things that I think about when I go to do these reviews and when I'm playing the game in general. Unfortunately, I am usually a little bit ahead of where the video comes out from, So if somebody says something like, hey, maybe you should try out this new move, or hey, I'll tell you why your loot filter isn't working, I probably don't fix that for a whole extra act. But I appreciate the comments, and I do read all of them, and I will make an effort to respond or actively use any advice that you give me. So thank you very much, and play safe.